In the sun-baked fields of rural Tennessee, where dreams often wither like untended crops, Tom Walker's weathered hands tell a story of struggle and perseverance. His small farm, barely keeping afloat, holds just enough to sustain him and his young daughter Sarah after his wife's passing. But fate has a peculiar way of turning the tide when kindness flows from an honest heart. On a stormy morning, the desperate trumpeting of a baby elephant caught in floodwaters would change everything. In the murky waters of Cedar Creek, Tom makes a choice that will ripple through time, one that catches the attention of someone extraordinary. Could a simple act of compassion lead to not just saving an elephant, but finding a love that transforms two lonely souls forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn crept across the Walker farm like a hesitant visitor, painting long shadows across fields that had seen better days. Tom Walker's boots left deep impressions in the morning dew as he made his way to the barn, each step heavy with purpose and memory. The old ledger tucked under his arm felt heavier than usual, its pages filled with red ink and dwindling hopes. Inside the weathered barn, Tom settled onto his father's old stool, the wood groaning familiar protests. Pulling out his reading glasses, he opened the ledger under the weak light of a naked bulb. The numbers hadn't improved overnight. They never did. 3 missed mortgage payments, mounting feed costs, and a tractor repair bill that made his stomach clench. "Morning, Daddy." Sarah's voice, bright as summer sunshine, cut through his brooding. His 12-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, her mother's garden journal clutched to her chest like a precious treasure. Emily's neat handwriting still filled those pages with dreams of sustainable farming and pressed flowers from better times. "Morning, sweetheart." Tom managed a smile, closing the ledger before Sarah could see its contents. "Ready to check on your mother's garden?" Sarah nodded eagerly, her dark hair catching the early light. "The tomatoes are almost ready. Mom's notes say they need extra care this week." She opened the journal, pointing to a page where Emily had sketched detailed growing instructions. "See, just like she wrote." Tom's throat tightened as he watched Sarah trace her mother's handwriting. 2 years had passed since Emily's battle with cancer ended, but her presence lived on in these quiet moments, in Sarah's determined gardening, in the way the morning light caught their daughter's eyes. Emily's eyes. "Your mother would be proud of how you're keeping her garden alive," Tom said softly, standing to join Sarah. Together, they walked to the small plot behind the house, a green oasis in the struggling farm's landscape. Emily's careful planning had created a self-sustaining garden that produced year-round, following organic principles she'd researched extensively. "I remember when Mum started this," Sarah said, kneeling to check the soil moisture. "She said every seed we plant is a promise to tomorrow." Her small hands worked with surprising expertise, testing the earth just as Emily had taught her. Tom watched his daughter work, remembering the night Emily had made him promise to keep the farm, to give Sarah roots in the land she loved. "We're Walker farmers," Emily had whispered, her voice weak but determined. "This land raised generations of strong people. It'll raise our Sarah, too." The morning routine unfolded around them, checking irrigation lines, pulling weeds, harvesting what was ready. Sarah chatted about school projects and her plans for expanding the garden, while Tom's mind wandered to the bank notice, sitting unopened. On his desk, the farm had been in the Walker family for 4 generations, but this might be the season that broke that chain. A distant rumble of thunder drew their attention to the horizon. Dark clouds were gathering over Cedar Creek, promising a storm that could either bless or curse their struggling fields. Sarah looked up from her work, soil still clinging to her fingers. "Mom's journal says rain is good luck," she offered hopefully, reading from a dog-eared page. "She wrote that storms bring change." Tom squeezed her shoulder, remembering how Emily had always found silver linings in the darkest clouds. "Your mother was wise about a lot of things, Sarah." Let's hope she was right about this too. They worked until the first heavy drops began to fall, gathering tools and covering delicate plants. As they headed inside, Sarah clutched Emily's journal close, protecting it from the rain. Tom paused at the door, looking out over his land, their land. The promise he'd made to Emily weighed heavily, mingling with the moisture in the air. The storm was coming, and with it, perhaps, the change they desperately needed. Tom couldn't know then just how right Emily's words would prove to be, or how a simple act of compassion in the midst of that storm would reshape their lives forever. The ancient flip phone in Tom's pocket buzzed with unexpected urgency. He pulled it out, squinting at the small screen through rain-spotted glasses. The weather service alert glowed harsh and clear. Flash flood warning for Cedar Creek area. Immediate action required. Tom had seen enough Tennessee storms to know when one meant business. This one did. The air held that peculiar thickness that preceded the worst downpours, and the wind had taken on a circular pattern that set his teeth on edge. Across the valley, low-hanging clouds, the color of bruised plums, dragged their bellies across the hills. "Sarah," he called through the screen door, "time to bring in the chickens." They'd developed this storm routine over years of practice, each taking their assigned tasks without discussion. Through the window, he watched his daughter dart across the yard, her yellow raincoat a bright spot against the darkening sky. Meteorologists had been warning about this system for days. Climate change, they said, was making these events more frequent, more unpredictable. Tom thought of the creek that bordered his property, remembered how it had jumped its banks 3 times in the past decade. Each flood had taken another bite out of his usable acreage. Inside the barn, Tom worked quickly to secure anything that might blow away. Old feed bags, empty containers, loose tools, all found their places behind locked doors. The radio on his workbench crackled with static-filled updates about road closures and rising water levels. A sharp gust rattled the barn's metal roof, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like bowling balls across heaven's floor. The storm was moving faster than expected. Tom's hands moved automatically through familiar tasks, while his mind calculated risks. The lower field might flood, but the house sat high enough to stay dry. The garden's drainage system, one of Emily's careful improvements, should handle the rainfall. Sarah burst through the barn door, rain dripping from her coat. "Chickens are secure," she reported, professional pride in her voice. "But, Daddy, I heard something strange down by the creek." Tom paused in his work. "Strange how?" "Like crying, but not human crying. It was hard to hear over the wind." The first fat drops of rain began to hit the barn roof with metallic pings. Tom checked his phone again. 3 more flood warnings had arrived. The creek would rise fast in this deluge. Whatever Sarah had heard, it wouldn't survive long if it was caught in the floodplain. "You head to the house," Tom instructed, reaching for his heavy rain gear. "I'll check the creek bank before it gets worse." Sarah's face pinched with worry. "Be careful, Daddy. Mum's journal says the creek can rise 6 feet in less than an hour during flash floods." Tom nodded, touched by her concern. "I remember. I'll stay well back from the bank." He helped her secure her raincoat and watched until she reached the house before turning toward the creek. The wind had picked up considerably, driving the rain sideways. It wasn't quite dark yet, but the storm. Clouds had brought an early twilight. Tom's flashlight beam seemed weak against the gathering gloom. As he approached the creek, the roar of fast-moving water grew louder, drowning out even the thunder. Cedar Creek had already swollen to twice its normal width. Brown water churned. Past carrying branches and debris, Tom played his light along the bank, looking for any sign of what Sarah might have heard. The beam caught something moving, but no, just another branch being swept downstream. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in rural Tennessee. A sound that cut through the storm's chaos like a knife, the frightened trumpet of an elephant calf. Tom stood frozen, certain he'd misheard, But there it came again, closer this time, desperate and clear. His light darted across the water, searching. The beam caught a flash of grey among the brown turbulence, not a branch or debris, but a living creature fighting for its life. The blood pounded in Tom's ears as he realized what he was seeing. A baby elephant, trunk barely above water, was clinging to a partially submerged log near the far bank. Each surge of water threatened to tear it away from its precarious hold. Tom's hand shook as he pulled out his phone. But who would he even call? By the time help arrived, the calf would be long gone. The creek was rising by the minute. Whatever decision he made, he had to make it now. Thunder cracked overhead like Judgment Day, and Tom Walker, fifth-generation farmer and widowed father, began to unzip his rain jacket. Some choices, he realized, weren't really choices at all. Tom's boots slipped on the muddy bank as he made his way downstream. The current had already pushed the elephant calf 30 yards from where he'd first spotted it. He needed to get ahead of its path, find a place where the creek bent. Somewhere. The water might push the calf closer to shore. "Hold on," he muttered, though the wind swallowed his words. "Just hold on." A flash of lightning illuminated the scene in stark detail. The calf's terrified eyes, its small trunk lifting desperately above the churning water, one ear visible like a grey sail in the brown torrent. It couldn't have been more than a few months old. Tom reached the bend in the creek where a massive oak had fallen years ago, its roots still anchored in the bank. He yanked off his jacket and boots, keeping only his work pants and t-shirt. From his truck, he grabbed a length of rope, the same one he used to pull stuck tractors from the mud. "Daddy, stop!" Sarah's voice cut through the storm. She stood at the top of the bank, terror clear on her face, even through the rain. "Stay back!" Tom shouted. "I need you to hold the flashlight. Keep it on the elephant." Something in his voice must have convinced her. Sarah planted her feet firmly and raised the light, her small hands steady despite her fear. Tom tied one end of the rope to the oak's exposed roots, testing it with his full weight. The other end he fastened around his waist, leaving enough slack to maneuver. The water, when he stepped in, was shockingly cold. The first few steps were manageable. The creek's edge was familiar territory. But as he waded deeper, the current grabbed at his legs with greedy hands. At waist depth, he had to lean into the flow to stay upright. The rope grew taut behind him. Another flash of lightning. The calf was closer now, still clinging to its log, but weakening. 20 feet away, 15. Tom braced himself. "Get ready," he called to Sarah. "When I say now, shine the light right in front of me." The water was at his chest, then his shoulders. His feet found less purchase with each step. The current pressed against him like a living thing, trying to fold him under. Tom thought of Emily, wondering if she would call him brave or foolish for what he was about to do. The calf's log hit a submerged boulder and turned, bringing the animal within arm's reach. "Now!" Tom shouted. Sarah's light cut through the rain. The calf's eyes reflected golden in the beam, wide with terror. Up close, Tom could see it was even smaller than he'd thought, probably not even weaned yet. "Easy," he said, as much to himself as to the elephant. "Easy now." He lunged forward, wrapping both arms around the calf's body. Its skin felt like wet rubber, surprisingly warm against his cold hands. The baby elephant trumpeted in fear, its trunk whipping around in panic. The motion knocked Tom off balance. Water closed over his head, filling his nose and mouth with silt. The rope went slack for a heart-stopping moment before snapping tight, yanking painfully at his waist. He fought his way back to the surface, still clutching the calf. "Pull yourself back!" Sarah's voice seemed to come from very far away. "The rope, Daddy! Use the rope!" Tom's muscles screamed as he began the slow work of hauling them both toward shore, hand over hand along the rope. The calf, perhaps sensing rescue, had stopped struggling. Its small body trembled against his chest. Each step was a battle. The current hadn't weakened, but Tom's strength was fading fast. His fingers were going numb. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision. But Sarah's light never wavered, giving him a beacon to follow. 5 feet from shore, his legs gave out. He stumbled, going under again, but this time other hands grabbed him. Through water-blurred eyes, he saw neighbors, faces. Joe Carter from the dairy farm, Mike and Louise from the gas station, even old Mrs. Henderson from the post office. "We got you," Joe's deep voice rumbled. "We got you both." Many hands pulled them the rest of the way up the bank. Tom collapsed on the mud, gasping. Beside him, the elephant calf lay trembling but alive, its sides heaving with quick breaths. Sarah appeared with blankets, her face streaked with tears and rain. As the neighbors worked to wrap both Tom and the calf in warm layers, she knelt beside her father. "Mom would say you did a brave thing," she whispered, squeezing his cold hand. "A right thing." Tom looked at the tiny elephant, at his gathered neighbors, at his daughter's proud face. The storm still raged, the creek still rose, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, in this moment, he had kept a promise he'd never known. He'd made to be the kind of man his daughter could believe in, the kind of man who would reach out to help, no matter the cost. The calf's trunk reached out weakly, touching his arm as if in thanks. Or perhaps it was just seeking warmth. Either way, Tom Walker knew his life had just changed course, as surely as the creek had changed its banks. The storm raged on outside, but inside the Walker's barn, a different kind of tempest was brewing. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the local veterinarian, knelt beside the baby elephant, her weathered first aid kit open beside her. The contents, usually reserved for horses and cattle, seemed almost comically inadequate for their current patient. "Well," she said, pulling the stethoscope from her ears, "this is certainly a first for Cedar Creek." Her tone was light, but Tom could see the concern in her eyes as she rifled through her supplies. The calf lay on a bed of fresh hay, wrapped in horse blankets. Every few minutes it would let out a soft whimper that seemed to fill the entire barn. Sarah sat cross-legged near its head, speaking in soothing whispers while offering pieces of apple from her mother's garden. "She's eating," Sarah reported, hope bright in her voice. "That's good, right?" Dr. Gonzalez nodded, though her frown didn't entirely fade. "It's a good sign. But she's severely exhausted and showing signs of shock. The next 24 hours will be crucial." She pulled a series of medications from her kit, carefully measuring doses. "I'm having to estimate here. My usual charts don't exactly cover." "Baby elephants." Tom ran a hand through his still damp hair. "Will she make it? If she continues taking food and water, her chances are good." "But Tom," Dr. Gonzalez lowered her voice, glancing at Sarah, "we need to talk about what happens next. This isn't exactly a stray cat we can keep in the barn." Before Tom could respond, Sarah's voice rose in excitement. "Look, she likes the bananas better than the apples." The calf had indeed perked up at the sight of the fruit, her trunk reaching out with surprising dexterity to accept the offering. Sarah giggled as the trunk gently explored her hand, searching for more treats. "She's so gentle," Sarah marveled, "and smart. Watch how she checks my palm for more food." Tom watched his daughter with the elephant, seeing Emily's gentle spirit in every careful movement. Sarah had inherited her mother's way with animals, that infinite patience that made even the most frightened creatures trust her. Dr. Gonzalez began packing up her kit. "I've given her antibiotics and anti-inflammatory medication. Keep her warm and quiet. Try to get her to drink more water. She's still dehydrated from her ordeal." She pressed a handful of syringes into Tom's hand. "These are the next doses. Every 6 hours in the muscle, just like I showed you. I'll be back first thing tomorrow." After the vet left, Tom and Sarah settled into what felt like a vigil. The storm's fury gradually subsided to a steady rain, its rhythm punctuated by occasional thunder. The calf dozed fitfully, startling awake at loud noises. "She needs a name," Sarah declared around midnight, fighting to keep her eyes open. "We can't just keep calling her she or the baby." Tom adjusted the blanket around his daughter's shoulders. They dragged chairs from the house, making a makeshift camp in the barn. "What did you have in mind?" Lucky, Sarah said without hesitation, because she was lucky you heard her, and lucky you saved her. She paused, considering. And maybe we're lucky too that she found us. The newly named Lucky stirred at the sound of their voices, her trunk reaching out until it found Sarah's hand. The gesture was so trusting, so innocent, that Tom felt his throat tighten. "Your mother would have loved this," he said softly. "She always said this farm could be more than just crops and cattle. She wanted it to be a place of healing." Sarah nodded sleepily. "Mum's journal has a whole section about animal sanctuaries. She'd circled articles and made notes." She yawned, leaning against her father's shoulder. "Maybe this is what she meant for us to do." Tom sat in the quiet barn, listening to the rain and the soft breathing of his daughter and their improbable guest. The reality of their situation hadn't fully hit him yet. The questions, the complications, the inevitable authorities who would come asking about a baby elephant in rural Tennessee. But for now, in this moment, he felt a strange peace. The barn had become a sanctuary of sorts, filled with the simple grace of beings helping beings. Lucky's presence, though unexpected and surely temporary, had already begun to change things. He could feel it in the way Sarah's grief-hardened shell had cracked open, in the way the neighbors had rallied to help, in the way his own heart had remembered how to take risks that mattered. Dawn was still hours away, bringing with it challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But here in the lantern-lit barn, watching his daughter sleep beside a rescued baby elephant, Tom Walker felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope, as fragile and precious as a seedling after drought. Morning light filtered through the barn's weathered boards, casting stripes across Sarah's latest drawing. Her colored pencils moved with careful precision as she captured Lucky's playful expression, the way the young elephant's eyes crinkled with joy when offered fresh fruit. The growing collection of sketches taped to the barn wall told the story of their first week together. Lucky sleeping, Lucky discovering the water hose, Lucky following Sarah through the garden like an oversized puppy. "You got her trunk just right in that one," Tom observed, setting down a fresh bale of hay. The barn had taken on a different character since Lucky's arrival. Part nursery, part art gallery, part rehabilitation center. The neat stack of medical supplies from Dr. Gonzalez shared space with Sarah's art supplies and the growing pile of research materials on elephant care. Lucky announced her awakening with a soft trumpet, already recognizing the sound of Tom's voice. She rose from her bed of straw, each movement more confident than the day before. The limp from her ordeal had almost disappeared, though she still favored her right side slightly. "Morning, sweet girl," Sarah crooned, setting aside her sketchbook. She reached for the morning's first batch of fruit, carefully prepared according to Dr. Gonzalez's instructions. "Daddy, look, she's getting bigger already." Tom had noticed. Lucky's appetite was prodigious, and their grocery bills had doubled. He'd had to drive to 3 different produce markets to find enough fresh fruits and vegetables to satisfy her needs. The farm's finances, already stretched thin, were approaching a breaking point. But watching Sarah bloom in Lucky's presence made it impossible to regret their situation. His daughter had switched her school research project to elephant conservation, spent hours reading about sanctuary management, and started teaching Lucky simple commands. The spark that had dimmed in her eyes after Emily's passing had returned, brighter than ever. "Mrs. Henderson called again," Tom mentioned, trying to keep his tone casual. "Said another reporter was asking questions at the post office." Sarah's face fell slightly. They both knew their time with Lucky couldn't last forever. Someone, somewhere, must be missing a baby elephant. The local paper's story about the rescue had been picked up by regional news, and now unfamiliar cars occasionally drove past the farm, slowing to peer down their long driveway. Maybe. Sarah hesitated, scratching behind Lucky's ears just the way she liked. Maybe whoever she belongs to won't want her back. Maybe they'll see how happy she is here and let us keep her. Tom's heart ached at the hope in her voice. "Sweetheart." I know," Sarah sighed, But Mom always said everything happens for a reason. Maybe Lucky came to us because this is where she's supposed to be. Lucky chose that moment to wrap her trunk around Sarah's waist in a gentle hug, a behavior she'd developed over the past few days. The gesture never failed to bring a smile to Sarah's face, and today was no exception. A sharp knock at the barn. Joker interrupted the moment. Tom tensed, but it was only Dr. Gonzalez for her daily checkup. The vet's visits had become shorter as Lucky's health improved, but she remained cautiously optimistic. Blood pressure's good, she announced after her examination. Weight's increasing normally. She's healing beautifully. She paused, watching. Lucky play with a large rubber ball they'd repurposed from the neighbor's horse farm. But Tom, the calls I'm getting, people are starting to ask questions I can't answer. Tom nodded. He'd been expecting this conversation. How long can you hold them off? A few days, maybe a week, but eventually someone's going to come looking. A baby elephant isn't exactly something that falls off the back of a truck. Smiled sadly at Sarah, who was pretending not to listen while showing Lucky a new trick with the ball. You've done an amazing thing here, both of you. But it can't last, Tom finished quietly. Dr. Gonzalez squeezed his arm sympathetically before gathering her things. As she left, Tom noticed a sleek black SUV with tinted windows driving slowly past the farm. Something about its deliberate pace sent a shiver down his spine. Sarah was still playing with Lucky, their happiness evident in every interaction. But Tom couldn't shake the feeling that their small miracle was about to change in ways none of them could predict. He just hoped, whatever came next, that the bond they'd forged would somehow survive the transition. The convoy of black SUVs appeared just as Tom was finishing the morning feed. 3 identical vehicles pulled into the farm's driveway with military precision, their polished surfaces incongruous against the rustic backdrop. From the barn, Lucky trumpeted a curious greeting. The woman who stepped out of the lead vehicle wasn't what Tom had expected. No government badge or clipboard-wielding official. Instead, she moved with the fluid grace of someone used to commanding attention. Her crisp linen suit probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment, but there was something approachable in her expression as she surveyed the farm. "Mr. Walker?" Her voice carried a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. "I'm Alexandra Chen." She extended a sleek business card that seemed to absorb the morning light. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Before Tom could respond, Sarah emerged from the barn, hay clinging to her overalls. She froze at the sight of the visitors, instinctively moving to block the barn door. Alexandra's expression softened as she regarded Sarah. "You must be the young artist I've heard about. Your drawings of the calf are remarkably accurate." Sarah's eyes widened. "You've seen my drawings? The local paper published them with their story." Alexandra smiled, and Tom noticed that it reached her eyes. "You captured her personality beautifully, especially that little wrinkle she gets above her trunk when she's happy." Lucky's curious trumpeting drew Alexandra's attention to the barn. Something flickered across her face, relief perhaps, or recognition. She took a step forward, then caught herself, turning back to Tom. "Mr. Walker, I know this is unexpected. I'd like to explain everything, but first, may I see her?" Tom studied the woman before him. Her carefully maintained exterior couldn't quite hide the worry in her eyes. "Sarah," he said quietly, "why don't you show Ms. Chen how well Lucky's been doing?" The barn's interior felt suddenly cramped with the addition of their visitor. Lucky immediately focused on Alexandra, her trunk extended in greeting. To Tom's surprise, the elephant gave an excited little shuffle, clearly recognizing something familiar in the newcomer's scent. "Hello, little one," Alexandra murmured, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. "You've had quite an adventure, haven't you?" Sarah hovered protectively near Lucky. "She's doing really well. Dr. Gonzalez says she's gained 12 pounds and her limp is almost gone." She pointed to her latest drawing. "See? She loves playing with the water hose, and she's learning commands and—" "Sarah," Tom interrupted. "Gently. recognizing the rising panic in his daughter's voice. "Let's give Miss Chen a moment with Lucky." Alexandra had knelt beside the elephant, running practiced hands along Lucky's sides and legs, checking for injuries. Her movements were confident but gentle, and Lucky responded with obvious trust. "You've done a remarkable job with her care," Alexandra said finally, standing and brushing hay from her knees. "Most people wouldn't know how to handle a traumatized elephant calf. She's clearly thriving here. Are you taking her away?" Sarah's question hung in the air like storm clouds. Alexandra's response was careful, measured. "That's something I'd like to discuss with your father. But first," she reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. "Would you like to see where Lucky came from and meet her mother?" For the next hour, they sat on hay bales while Alexandra shared photos and videos of an elephant sanctuary in Thailand. She explained how she'd been transporting Lucky to a new facility when a series of transportation delays and a paperwork mix-up had led to the calf being temporarily housed in a local exotic animal reserve. "The storm must have frightened her," Alexandra said. "She broke through a section of fencing we didn't know was weak. We've been searching frantically ever since." Tom watched as Sarah became absorbed in the tablet's images, her fears temporarily forgotten in the face of Alexandra's evident passion for her work. The woman clearly knew her subject, answering Sarah's rapid-fire questions with patience and unexpected humor. But there was something else there too, something in the way Alexandra's gaze lingered on their modest barn with its makeshift adaptations, in how she noted the care they'd taken with Lucky's diet, in her gentle handling of Sarah's concerns. Tom recognized the look of someone seeing possibilities where others might see only limitations. "Mr. Walker," Alexandra said finally, her tone shifting to something more formal, "I have a rather unusual proposal for you. Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee." The kitchen of the Walker farmhouse hadn't seen a visitor quite like Alexandra Chen before. She sat at the worn oak table, Emily's table, with an ease that somehow bridged the gap between her evident wealth and their humble surroundings. Steam rose from the coffee mug in her hands as she unrolled a set of blueprints across the table's scarred surface. "I'll be direct, Mr. Walker," she began, then paused. "May I call you Tom?" He nodded, trying not to show his surprise at the plans before him. They showed his farm, every acre, every building, but reimagined in ways he'd never considered. "What you did for Lucky was extraordinary," Alexandra continued. "Not just the rescue, but the care afterward. You and Sarah showed an instinct for rehabilitation that can't be taught." She traced a finger along the blueprint's lines. "It made me wonder what this place could become with the right resources." Sarah, who'd been pretending to do homework at the counter while eavesdropping, abandoned all pretense and moved closer to study the plans. "I should explain who I really am," Alexandra said, reaching into her briefcase. She withdrew a magazine, Forbes, with her own face on the cover. The headline read, "Alexandra Chen, the tech billionaire revolutionizing wildlife conservation." Tom's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. "Billionaire." Alexandra's smile held a touch of self-consciousness. "I made my fortune developing wildlife tracking software. Started with basic GPS collars for endangered species, expanded into drone monitoring systems, satellite tracking networks." She shrugged. "Silicon Valley loved the combination of tech and conservation. The money followed." "And now you buy elephants?" Tom asked, trying to process this revelation. "I create sanctuaries," she corrected gently, "modern ones that combine traditional care methods with cutting-edge technology. Lucky was meant for our newest facility, but," she gestured at the blueprints, "sometimes the universe has other plans." Sarah leaned over the table, pointing at a section of the drawings. "Is that our barn? Completely renovated," Alexandra confirmed. "Climate-controlled, with proper medical facilities, but keeping its historical character. The lower fields would become grazing areas with natural barriers and monitoring systems. The creek, properly managed, could become a safe water feature." Tom studied the plans more carefully. The basic layout of his farm remained, but transformed. Solar panels on the barn roof, new irrigation systems in the fields, a series of connected paddocks and enclosures, all designed to blend with the natural landscape. You want to turn our farm into an elephant sanctuary? Not just elephants, Alexandra said. Your property has unique features that could support various rescued species. The rolling terrain, the water access, the existing structures. With modifications, this could become a world-class rehabilitation center. She pulled out another document, this one bearing the logo of her foundation. I'm prepared to offer you full funding for the conversion, plus a generous salary as facility manager. You'd retain ownership of the land with a partnership agreement for the sanctuary operations. Tom's mind raced. The proposal was unprecedented, almost unbelievable. And Lucky, Alexandra's expression warmed, would stay right here as our first resident. She's already bonded with Sarah and clearly thrives under your care. We'd bring in trained staff to support you, of course, but you and Sarah would remain integral to her care team. Sarah's intake of breath was audible. Really? She could stay? There's more, Alexandra continued, her voice taking on a hint of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. The sanctuary would need a full-time veterinary director. I've already spoken with Dr. Gonzalez. She's interested if you approve. And she hesitated, then forged ahead. I'd be here frequently myself, overseeing the technology integration and helping establish protocols. I have a feeling this place, it could become something special. Tom caught something in her tone, something beyond professional interest. The way she looked around their kitchen, studied Sarah's drawings on the refrigerator, noted the small touches of Emily that still permeated their home. She was seeing more than just a potential sanctuary site. This is overwhelming, he admitted. The expense alone is not your concern, Alexandra interrupted firmly. I have the resources, Tom. What I need are partners who understand that this work is about more than money. People who see these animals as individuals worthy of care and dignity. She glanced toward the barn, where Lucky's occasional trumpets could still be heard. People like you and Sarah. The morning sun caught the edge of Emily's garden journal, still sitting in its place of honor by the window. Tom remembered her. Dreams of the farm becoming something more, something that helped heal both animals and people. Can we think about it? He asked finally. Alexandra stood, gathering her materials except for the blueprints, which she left on the table. Of course. Take all the time you need. She reached into her jacket and produced another business card, this one with a handwritten number on the back. This is my personal line. Call me when you're ready to talk more. As she headed for the door, she paused. Oh, and Sarah, Lucky's mother, she had the same artistic streak, always drawing patterns in the sand with her trunk. Some things, it seems, run in families. They watched through the window as Alexandra's convoy departed, the dust from their vehicles settling in the morning light. The blueprints remained on the table, full of possibilities none of them had imagined just days ago. Sarah touched the plans gently, as if they might disappear. Dad, what Mum wrote in her journal about the farm becoming a place of healing. Maybe this is what she meant. Maybe this is our new story. Late that night, after Sarah had finally gone to bed, Tom sat at the kitchen table with two documents before him. The old family deed to the Walker farm, its corners soft with age, and Alexandra's glossy sanctuary proposal. The deed bore the signatures of 4 generations of Walkers, each one pledging to work the land, to grow things, to carry on the family legacy. His father's signature, bold and certain, seemed to watch him with judgment. A gentle tap at the screen door interrupted his brooding. Joe Carter stood on the porch, holding a mason jar of his wife's sweet tea, their signal for a serious conversation. Thought you might still be up, Joe said, settling into the chair across from Tom. His eyes took in the papers on the table. Heard you had some fancy visitors today. Tom managed a weak smile. News travels fast. Small town. Joe poured 2. Glasses of tea. Mary Henderson said the woman was some kind of millionaire. Billionaire, actually. Tom pushed Alexandra's proposal across the table. She wants to turn the farm into an animal sanctuary, starting with Lucky. Joe whistled low as he studied the plans. These are some serious changes, Tom. But, he paused, choosing his words carefully, maybe serious changes aren't such a bad thing. Dad always said a walker's duty was to work the land, to grow food, raise cattle, not to— Tom gestured at the blueprints. Turn it into some kind of wildlife park. Your daddy was a good man, Joe acknowledged, but he never had to farm in times like these. Small farms are dying, Tom. You know that better than most. He took a thoughtful sip of tea. And I remember Emily talking about something like this, before she got sick, about the farm becoming more than just a farm. Tom's throat tightened. He pulled Emily's garden journal from its shelf, opening to the pages she'd filled with sanctuary research. Her handwriting flowed across the margins. A place of healing, she'd written, for animals, for people, for the land itself. I keep thinking about what she'd say, Tom admitted. But it's not just about what we want. The whole community depends on this farm, has for generations. The summer jobs, the produce stand, the school visits during harvest. Joe's laugh surprised him. Tom Walker, sometimes you carry so much weight, you can't see the opportunities right in front of you. You think those jobs would disappear. Sounds to me like this sanctuary would create more work, better work, year-round instead of just seasonal. He had a point. Alexandra's proposal included positions for local staff, educational programs, even plans to maintain part of the land for sustainable agriculture. The produce stand could expand to include a visitor center. The old cotton fields transformed into natural habitats. Sarah's different since Lucky came, Tom said softly. More like her old self, more like Emily. We've all seen it, Joe agreed. That girl's found her calling. Just like her mother had a way with growing things, Sarah has a way with animals. You really want to take that away from her. Through the window, Tom could see the barn where Lucky slept. Solar-powered security lights cast a gentle glow around the building. Another of Alexandra's quick improvements. The sight reminded him of something else. The way Alexandra had looked at his daughter's drawings, her genuine interest in Sarah's observations about Lucky's behavior. She wasn't just some rich investor looking for a tax write-off. She saw what this place could become. Change isn't always about letting go, Joe said, rising to leave. Sometimes it's about building something new on the foundation of what came before. He squeezed Tom's shoulder. Emily knew that. Maybe that's why she left all those sanctuary notes in her journal. She was leaving you a map to the farm's future. After Joe left, Tom walked out to the barn. Lucky acknowledged his presence. With a soft rumble, her trunk reaching out in greeting. Sarah's latest drawings lined the walls, but among them now were Alexandra's technical sketches, practical plans for converting the space while preserving its character. He touched the old barn wall, feeling the solid oak beneath his palm. 5. Generations of walkers had sheltered animals within these walls. Maybe the only thing changing was the kind of animals they'd be protecting. The decision, he realized, had probably been made the moment he'd stepped into that floodwater to save a drowning elephant. Everything since then, Sarah's renewed spirit, Alexandra's arrival, even finding Emily's sanctuary research, felt less like coincidence and more like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Tom pulled out his phone and looked at Alexandra's number. Tomorrow would be soon enough to call. For now, he simply sat with Lucky, watching the stars through the barn door, feeling the weight of generations shift into something that felt surprisingly like blessing. The first sanctuary blueprint now hung framed in the farmhouse kitchen, its clean lines and careful measurements gradually becoming reality outside. Alexandra had insisted on preserving the farm's character while upgrading its capabilities, a balance that revealed itself in 100 small details. Solar panels designed to complement the barn's vintage architecture, modern medical equipment housed in lovingly restored outbuildings, state-of-the-art security systems disguised as traditional fencing. The key is working with the land, not against it, Alexandra explained one morning as she and Tom walked the property. She'd traded her usual business attire for jeans and work boots, her tablet computer incongruous against the pastoral setting. Every natural feature can serve a purpose. Tom watched as she gestured towards Cedar Creek, where environmentalists were installing natural filtration systems. The water flow here is perfect for creating a safe bathing area for the elephants. Lucky's already shown us how much she loves it. As if on cue, a joyful trumpet echoed across the fields. Lucky, now noticeably larger and healthier, was taking her morning swim under Sarah's watchful eye. Dr. Gonzalez stood nearby, making notes on Lucky's progress while consulting with a visiting elephant specialist. Sarah's presentation at school went well yesterday, Tom mentioned, smiling at the memory. Her class wants to be the first to visit when we open. Alexandra's face lit up. I heard. The educational outreach coordinator was impressed with her ideas for student programs. She hesitated, then added softly, "She has her mother's gift for teaching, doesn't she?" The casual reference to Emily surprised Tom. Few people mentioned his late wife so naturally, understanding she was still part of their story. But Alexandra had studied Emily's journal extensively while planning the sanctuary, treating her notes and dreams with profound respect. Emily would have loved all this, Tom admitted, gesturing at the transformation around them, especially the garden expansion. The original garden plot had been incorporated into a larger sustainable agriculture project, providing fresh food for both animals and staff. Emily's careful plantings now served as a template for new growing areas, her organic methods scaled up to sanctuary proportions. "I've been meaning to show you something," Alexandra said, pulling up a file on her tablet. "We've been analyzing the soil composition in Emily's garden. Her techniques for improving soil health were years ahead of current research. We'd like to implement them across the property." She handed him the tablet, their fingers brushing briefly. Tom noticed she didn't immediately pull away, and something warm flickered in his chest. These moments had been happening more frequently. Shared glances, lingering conversations, small touches that felt increasingly less accidental. "Dad! Alexandra!" Sarah's voice carried across the field. "Lucky's doing the new behavior we practiced." They watched as the young elephant demonstrated a gentle trunk-shake greeting with Dr. Gonzalez, a social behavior that showed growing trust and adaptation. Sarah beamed with pride, her notebook full of behavioral observations clutched to her chest. "She's a natural animal behaviorist," Alexandra observed. "The way she picks up on subtle cues, documents everything." She glanced at Tom. "The foundation has a youth science program, you know. Sarah would be perfect for it." Before Tom could respond, his phone buzzed with an alert from the new security system. "Visitors at the gate," he reported. "Looks like the construction crew with the materials for the welcome center." Alexandra checked her own phone, frowning slightly. "They're early. I should handle this." She started to walk away, then turned back. "Have dinner with me tonight? There's something I'd like to discuss about the sanctuary's future." Tom felt his pulse quicken at the suggestion. "What about Sarah? Dr. Gonzalez already offered to take her to that new pizza place in town. Something about celebrating Lucky's progress." Alexandra's smile held a hint of conspiracy. "I think we're being set up." "Looks that way," Tom agreed, finding he didn't mind at all. "Dinner would be nice." As Alexandra walked toward the gate, Tom watched Sarah working with Lucky, saw the construction vehicles approaching with materials for the next phase, felt the energy of positive change humming through his family's land. The old deed in the kitchen drawer still held the history of the Walker farm, but now it was becoming part of a larger story. Each morning brought new progress, healing animals, growing gardens, strengthening connections. And perhaps, Tom thought, watching Alexandra's retreating figure, something else was growing too, Something unexpected and wonderful, like a rare flower blooming in Emily's garden. The failed irrigation system part sat on Tom's workbench like an accusation, its cracked housing telling a story of miscalculation. The high-tech watering system, designed for the sanctuary's expanding needs, had proven incompatible with the farm's aging power grid. Now, sections of the new gardens were showing signs of stress, and the construction timeline was falling behind. "We'll need to upgrade the entire electrical infrastructure," Alexandra said, her usual confidence dimmed by frustration. She'd been up since dawn, coordinating with engineers via video conference. "It's not just about the irrigation, the medical equipment, security systems, climate controls. Everything depends on stable power." Tom rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of multiple problems converging. The county zoning board was asking questions about their permits, concerned about the scope of changes to the historic farmland. The construction crews were hitting unexpected obstacles: old wells, forgotten utility lines, patches of unstable soil. And now this. "What's the timeline for the upgrade?" he asked, already dreading the answer. 3 weeks minimum, maybe longer. Alexandra's tablet chimed with another urgent message. "The Foundation's board is getting nervous about the delays and cost overruns." The mention of her board brought a new tension to the room. Their dinner the previous week had been interrupted by an emergency call from her investors, concerned about the project's expanding budget. They'd barely had time to touch their food, let alone discuss whatever Alexandra had wanted to share. About the sanctuary's future. Sarah appeared in the workshop doorway, her expression worried. "Lucky's not eating again," she reported. "Dr. Gonzalez thinks she's stressed from all the construction noise." The elephant's recent behavior changes had been subtle but concerning. The once playful calf had become withdrawn, startling at the constant sound of heavy machinery. Even her special bond with Sarah seemed strained. "I'll call the specialist," Alexandra said, reaching for her phone, but it was already ringing with another crisis. Her face fell as she checked the number. "I have to take this. It's the board chairman." Tom watched her walk away, noting the stiffness in her shoulders. These past weeks had taken a toll on her too. The easy warmth of their early collaboration had been replaced by urgent meetings and problem-solving sessions. They rarely spoke about anything except work anymore. "Dad?" Sarah's voice drew his attention back. "Is everything going to be okay?" He wanted to offer immediate reassurance, but his daughter deserved honesty. "We're having some growing pains, sweetheart. Big changes sometimes come with big challenges." Sarah picked up the broken irrigation part, turning it over in her hands. "Mom's journal talks about that, about how the hardest part of growing anything is the middle stage, when the roots are stretching but aren't strong enough yet." The wisdom in her words, Emily's words, struck Tom deeply. They were in that vulnerable middle stage now, trying to bridge what was with what could be. Maybe they'd been pushing too hard, too fast. He found Alexandra in the barn office. Her call finished, but her worry evident. Lucky watched from her enclosure, trunk reaching through the bars, as if trying to offer comfort. "That bad?" Tom asked. "The board wants to pause the project." Alexandra's voice was tight. "They're suggesting we transfer Lucky to the completed facility in Thailand while we reassess the situation here." The thought of losing Lucky felt like a physical blow. Sarah would be devastated. "I know." Alexandra's professional facade cracked slightly. "I would be too. This place, what we're trying to build here, it's become more than just another sanctuary project." The unspoken weight of that "more" hung between them. More than a business venture, more than a simple partnership, more than either of them had expected when Lucky first brought them together. "What do you need?" Tom asked simply. Alexandra looked surprised by the question. "What? To make this work, to convince your board. What do you need from us?" She studied him for a long moment. Time, proof that this can work, and she hesitated, then continued softly. "Partners who believe in it as much as I do. You have those." Tom assured her. The whole community's invested now. Joe's been coordinating local volunteers. Dr. Gonzalez has other vets interested in joining the program. Sarah's school is planning their whole science curriculum around the sanctuary. And you? Alexandra asked, her voice careful. Are you still sure about all this? Tom reached out and covered her hand with his, the first deliberate touch they'd shared in weeks. I've never been more sure of anything, well, almost anything. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and unspoken feelings. Then Lucky trumpeted, making them both jump, and the spell broke as reality rushed back in. Right, Alexandra said, straightening her shoulders. Let's solve this power grid issue first, then maybe we can finally have that dinner conversation. The torn partnership agreement lay between them on the kitchen table, its crisp, legal language now marred by a ragged edge. Alexandra hadn't meant to rip it. The paper had caught on her tablet as she'd hurriedly gathered her things after the video conference with her board, but the symbolic damage was done. They can't just shut us down, Tom insisted, his voice rough with emotion. We've come too far. They're not shutting us down, Alexandra corrected, though her tone lacked conviction. They're suggesting a strategic reorganization, moving Lucky and any future rescues to established facilities while we solve the infrastructure issues. You mean while you solve them, without us? The bitterness in Tom's voice made her flinch. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows, carrying the sound of idle construction equipment. Work had stopped that morning when the latest inspection revealed structural problems in the medical building's foundation. The discovery had triggered an emergency board meeting, and everything had unraveled from there. It's temporary, Alexandra tried again, but Tom cut her off. Like the temporary power upgrade that's now 3 months behind schedule, or the temporary permit delays that are threatening our winter funding. He stood, pacing the kitchen. Just be honest, Alexandra. Your board thinks this was a mistake. They think we're a mistake. The personal edge in his words hung in the air between them. Their growing closeness had become another point of concern for the board, a potential conflict of interest that complicated an already complex situation. That's not fair, Alexandra said quietly. I've fought for this project, for this place, for... A commotion from outside interrupted her. Sarah burst through the door, her face streaked with tears. Lucky's sick. Dr. Gonzalez needs you both right now. They found the veterinarian in the barn, her face grave as she monitored Lucky's vital signs. The young elephant lay on her side, her breathing labored, her usual bright energy completely gone. I think it's stress-induced colic, Dr. Gonzalez explained. The construction noise, the changing routines, the tension she's picking up from everyone. She gave them both a pointed look. Elephants are incredibly sensitive to emotional atmospheres. She knows something's wrong. Sarah knelt by Lucky's head, stroking her trunk gently. Please don't let them take her away, she whispered, looking up at Alexandra with Emily's eyes. She's family now. Alexandra felt the weight of multiple responsibilities crushing in on her. The board was waiting for her decision. The contractors needed direction. The press had gotten wind of the problems and were asking questions. And now Lucky, the heart of everything they'd been trying to build, was suffering. Her tablet chimed again. Probably another urgent message from the board. She turned it off without looking. We need to clear the barn, Dr. Gonzalez instructed. Too many people, too much anxiety. Sarah can stay since Lucky responds well to her. The rest of you, out. In the gathering dusk outside, Alexandra finally broke. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she said, her carefully maintained composure cracking. I had a vision for this place, for all of us. I thought if I just worked hard enough, planned carefully enough. You thought you could control everything, Tom finished, like you do with your tech companies. But this isn't Silicon Valley. Alexandra, this is a farm. Things grow at their own pace here. They heal at their own pace. Or they don't heal at all. She looked at him directly. Your wife knew that, didn't she? Sometimes, no matter how much we want something, don't. Tom's voice was sharp. Don't use Emily to justify giving up. I'm trying to be realistic. The board's concerns are valid. The technical problems, the delays, the cost overruns, and us, Tom interrupted. Where do we fit in your realistic assessment? Before she could answer, Sarah appeared in the barn doorway. She's asking for you both, she said simply. They found Lucky slightly improved, responding to the medication Dr. Gonzalez had administered. The elephant's trunk reached out as they approached, touching first Tom, then Alexandra, as if trying to pull them closer together. The board's waiting for my decision, Alexandra said softly. Tom looked around the barn, at Sarah's drawings, on the walls, at the half-installed medical equipment, at the struggling but determined elephant who had brought them all together. Then make it, he said. But remember what you're really choosing between. Numbers on a spreadsheet or something that could change lives, including yours. Alexandra's tablet lay forgotten in her pocket as she faced the hardest decision of her career. Outside, the wind continued to blow, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called, a lonely sound that seemed to echo the uncertainty hanging over the Walker farm. The packed suitcase in Alexandra's rental car seemed to mock everything they'd tried to build. Dawn was just breaking over the Walker farm, painting the sky in colors that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Lucky's condition had stabilized overnight, but the same couldn't be said for anything else. The transport team will arrive next week, Alexandra said, her voice professionally distant as she handed Tom a folder of documents. They're the best in the business. Lucky will be well cared for during the move to Thailand. Tom didn't take the folder. So that's it? One board meeting and everything we've built here just ends? What we've built isn't sustainable. Alexandra's careful composure cracked slightly. The infrastructure problems, the permit issues, the board is right. We need to step back and reassess. You mean retreat? The bitterness in his voice surprised them both. Back to your corporate world where everything fits neatly into spreadsheets and profit margins. Sarah watched from the porch, her face showing a maturity beyond her years. She held her mother's garden journal close, as if drawing strength from it. Dr. Gonzalez stood beside her, one arm around the girl's shoulders. I never meant to hurt anyone, Alexandra said softly. Especially not Sarah or you. The unspoken weight of that you hung between them, heavy with might-have-beens. The dinner they never finished, the conversations left unspoken, the gentle touch of hands that had promised something more. Lucky's troubled trumpet carried from the barn, as if she sensed the fracturing of her adopted family. The sound seemed to physically pain Alexandra, who turned away quickly, but not before Tom caught the glisten of tears in her eyes. The foundation will honor all commitments to the local contractors, she continued, her business voice firmly back in place. And there's a generous severance package for— We don't want your money, Tom interrupted. We wanted your belief in this place, in what it could become. I did believe. Alexandra's mask slipped again. I still do, but sometimes believing isn't enough. Sometimes practical realities— Reality. Tom gestured at the half-finished sanctuary around them. Reality is that Lucky got better because she was here, with people who love her. Reality is that Sarah's found her purpose. Reality is that this community came together around something bigger than profit margins. Tom, please. Her voice held a plea she wouldn't fully express. Don't make this harder. Sarah chose that moment to approach, her step determined despite her obvious distress. She held out a folded paper to Alexandra, one of her drawings of Lucky. Mom always said that when something's worth doing, it's never easy, Sarah said quietly. She wrote it in her journal when she was sick, but she kept gardening anyway, because she believed in growing things, even when it was hard. Alexandra took the drawing with trembling hands. It showed Lucky playing in the creek, her joy evident in every pencil stroke. In the background, Alexandra herself was sketched sitting on the bank beside Tom, their shoulders touching as they watched the elephant's antics. Sarah, Alexandra started, but words failed her. You're giving up, Sarah said simply. Just Like the doctors wanted Mom to give up, but she didn't. Not until she finished teaching me everything she could about the garden. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when they're hard. The wisdom in the child's words seemed to hover in the morning air, as weighty as the mist rising from the fields. Alexandra looked down at the drawing again, then at her tablet with its dozens of urgent messages from the board. "I have to go," she said finally, tucking the drawing carefully into her briefcase. "The board is expecting me." She got into her car without looking back, though her hands gripped the steering wheel with unnecessary force. Tom and Sarah stood watching as she drove away, the gravel crunching under her tires with a sound of endings. "She'll come back," Sarah said with quiet certainty. "Lucky needs her, we all do." Tom wished he could share his daughter's confidence, but watching Alexandra's car disappear down their long driveway, he felt the weight of reality settling in. Dreams were beautiful things, but they couldn't always survive in the harsh light of day. In the barn, Lucky trumpeted again, a sound so mournful it seemed to echo the ache in Tom's chest. He turned toward the sound, knowing Sarah would follow. They still had work to do, hearts to mend, decisions to face. "Come on," he said softly. "Lucky needs us." Behind them, the sun continued to rise over the Walker farm, illuminating a landscape caught between what was and what might have been. The old photo album had gathered dust on the top shelf, untouched since Emily's passing. Tom hadn't planned to pull it down. He'd been searching for some old property documents, but once it was in his hands, he couldn't put it away. He settled into Emily's reading chair, the leather worn soft by years of use, and opened the cover. The first photo caught him by surprise. Emily on their wedding day, not in the formal church portrait, but afterward, kneeling in her white dress, to plant a sapling near the barn. She'd insisted on it, saying their marriage should grow along with the tree. That oak now stood tall and strong, its branches stretching over the spot where they'd first found Lucky, in the creek. The spot where everything had changed. "Dad?" Sarah's voice drifted down from upstairs. "Have you seen Mom's old college yearbook? I need it for something." "Check the study," he called back, turning another page in the album. Here was Emily in her teaching days, surrounded by students in the school garden she'd created. Her passion for education had never been confined to classrooms. She'd believed in hands-on learning, in connecting children with nature, in teaching through experience rather than just books. The next photo made his breath catch. Emily, in the hospital, pale but smiling, working on her garden journal even then. She'd been so insistent about finishing it, about documenting everything she'd learned, about sustainable farming and natural rehabilitation. "Found it!" Sarah's footsteps thundered down the stairs. She burst into the living room, clutching both, the yearbook and Emily's journal, her eyes bright with discovery. "Dad, you need to see this!" She placed the yearbook beside the photo album, flipping pages with purpose. "Look at Mom's college environmental club. Look who else was a member." Tom leaned forward, squinting at a group photo from 20 years ago. There was Emily, young and vibrant, standing next to Alexandra. They knew each other. Sarah's excitement was contagious. And look at this. She opened Emily's journal to a page he'd never noticed before, filled with newspaper clippings about a young tech entrepreneur combining wildlife conservation with cutting-edge technology. The clippings traced Alexandra's early career, her first successes with wildlife tracking systems, the foundation she'd created. Emily's familiar handwriting filled the margins. Perfect partner for sanctuary conversion and contact when Sarah is older, share vision. Mom knew, Sarah said softly. She knew the farm could be more, and she knew Alexandra could help make it happen. She was planning this all along. Tom sat back, memories rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces, finally finding their proper places. Emily's detailed sanctuary research, her careful documentation of the farm's natural features, her insistence on sustainable practices. She'd been laying groundwork for a future she knew she wouldn't see. "There's more," Sarah continued, pulling out a sealed envelope from between the journal's pages. It was addressed to Alexandra Chen, dated just weeks before Emily's passing. Tom's hands shook as he opened it, unfolding a letter he'd never known existed. Dear Alexandra, you may not remember me from our college days, but I've followed your work with admiration. Your vision for combining conservation with innovation mirrors dreams I've had for our family farm. I'm writing because time is short for me, but the possibility of what this land could become lives on. My husband Tom and our daughter Sarah share a deep connection to this place, but they'll need help to transform it into something greater. When you receive this letter, it means they're ready for change. The farm has always been about growing things. Why not grow hope, healing, and second chances too? I believe you're the one who can help make this happen. Your technology paired with their heart could create something extraordinary. Take care of them for me. Emily Walker. Tom looked up to find Sarah watching him, her eyes full of understanding beyond her years. Mom didn't just leave us the farm, she said quietly. She left us a future, and she found the perfect person to help us build it. Lucky's evening trumpet echoed from the barn, where Dr. Gonzalez was preparing her for the upcoming transport. The sound carried both joy and melancholy, like a question waiting to be answered. Tom stood, Emily's letter still in his hand. 20 years ago, his wife and Alexandra had shared a vision. Now that vision had brought them all together, only to fall apart because they'd lost sight of what mattered most. Sarah, he said, reaching for his phone, how would you feel about a trip to Bangkok? His daughter's smile was all the answer he needed. Outside, Emily's oak tree cast long shadows in the evening light, its branches reaching toward the future she'd imagined for them all. The Thai sanctuary sprawled across the landscape like a carefully tended garden, its modern facilities blending seamlessly with the natural environment. Tom and Sarah stood at the observation point, Emily's letter and journal clutched in Sarah's hands, watching Alexandra direct the morning feeding routine. She hadn't noticed them yet, focused on supervising a group of caregivers while making notes on her ever-present tablet. Tom pulled out the hand-drawn sanctuary design he'd sketched on the long flight over. It wasn't as polished as Alexandra's blueprints, but it captured something essential about their farm, the way the land wanted to grow, to heal, to become something more. He'd spent hours working on it, incorporating Emily's vision with Alexandra's innovations and his own understanding of the property. She looks sad, Sarah observed, watching Alexandra. Despite her professional demeanor, there was a heaviness to her movements, a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there at the farm. A familiar trumpet cut through the morning air. Lucky, still in quarantine after her arrival, had caught their scent. The young elephant's call drew Alexandra's attention, and she turned toward them. The tablet slipped from her hands, barely caught by a startled staff member. Tom! Sarah! Her composure cracked as she crossed the observation area. What are you doing here? Sarah stepped forward first, holding out Emily's journal. We found something you need to see. Alexandra took the journal with trembling hands, her eyes widening as she recognized the handwriting. Emily's research. I remember her always writing in this during environmental club meetings. She looked up sharply. You know that you and Emily were friends in college, that she'd been planning the sanctuary conversion long before any of us knew. Tom moved closer, fighting the urge to reach for her. We found her letter too. The morning sun caught the tears in Alexandra's eyes as she read Emily's words. Around them, the sanctuary came alive with the sounds of elephants greeting the day, but in their small circle, time seemed to stand still. I never knew she'd written this, Alexandra said finally. When I heard about her passing, I sent a condolence card, but I wasn't sure she'd even remembered me. We'd lost touch after college. She traced Emily's signature with gentle fingers. But she hadn't just remembered. She'd been following everything, planning for us to find each other again, Tom finished softly. He held out his sanctuary design. I think I understand now what you both saw in the farm. It's not just about modernizing or expanding. It's about letting it become what it was always meant to be. Alexandra studied his drawings, her professional assessment softening into something more personal as she recognized elements of Emily's original vision woven through the design. "You've solved the power grid issue," she noted, pointing to his modifications, "and this water management system. Dad and Joe figured it out," Sarah explained proudly. "They said sometimes old farming knowledge works better than new technology. We just need both." "Both," Alexandra repeated thoughtfully. "The heart and the hardware. That's what Emily meant in her letter." She looked at Tom. "I've been doing everything wrong, haven't I? Trying to force modern solutions without honoring the farm's wisdom? And I was too focused on tradition to embrace necessary changes," Tom admitted. "We both lost sight of the balance." Lucky trumpeted again, closer now. She'd convinced her caregivers to let her approach the fence near them. Her trunk reached out, straining toward Sarah, who rushed to greet her friend. "She hasn't been the same since the move," Alexandra said, watching their reunion. "The veterinarians say she's healthy, but she misses home. Her real home." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Tom took a chance and reached for Alexandra's hand. This time she didn't pull away. "Come back with us," he said simply. "Help us build something that combines the best of both worlds, not just for Lucky, but for all of us." The board will listen to reason, Tom interrupted gently, "especially when they see how we've solved the technical issues. And when they understand this isn't just another project for you, it's personal, it's family." Alexandra's grip on his hand tightened. "Family," she echoed, watching Sarah with Lucky. She pulled out her tablet, determination replacing the sadness in her eyes. "We'll need to revise the permits, restructure the funding, and I should call Dr. Gonzalez." Tom couldn't help but smile. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Alexandra stretched up and kissed him softly. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with more than tears. "Emily always did know best," she whispered. "She just needed us to figure it out for ourselves." Sarah's delighted laugh mingled with Lucky's happy trumpeting, the sounds carrying across the sanctuary like a celebration. The morning sun painted everything in shades of promise, as if Emily's vision was finally, beautifully, coming to life. The new sanctuary welcome sign caught the morning light, its hand-carved letters filled with gold leaf. "Walker Chen Wildlife Sanctuary, where hope takes root." Tom watched as Sarah and Alexandra put the finishing touches on the installation, their shared smiles reflecting the joy of the moment. Lucky supervised the proceedings from nearby, now nearly twice the size she'd been during her rescue, but still maintaining her gentle demeanor. Her presence had been crucial in convincing Alexandra's board to approve the revised sanctuary plans. Their star resident had simply refused to thrive in Thailand, making her preference for the Walker farm clear to everyone. "The school buses are coming," Sarah announced, spotting the familiar yellow vehicles approaching down the newly paved drive. "First official tour day." She checked her junior naturalist badge, polished to a shine, while Lucky lifted her trunk in anticipation of meeting new friends. Alexandra joined Tom, slipping her hand into his as they watched the buses arrive. "Nervous?" she asked. "About the tours?" "No." He squeezed her hand. "About you meeting with the Historical Society this afternoon?" "Maybe a little." She laughed, the sound as warm as the autumn sunlight. "They'll love the preservation plans. Everything. We're building honors the farm's heritage. We're just adding new chapters to its story." The sanctuary had indeed found its balance. Traditional barn architecture now housed state-of-the-art medical facilities. Solar panels were designed to complement historic rooflines. The original gardens had expanded into teaching spaces where Emily's sustainable methods were shared with a new generation. The first group of students poured from the buses, their excitement visible even from a distance. Dr. Gonzalez waited to greet them, along with her new staff of resident veterinarians. The sanctuary's reputation for combining traditional animal care with innovative rehabilitation techniques had attracted top talent from around the world. "Remember our first school group?" Tom asked, watching Sarah lead the children toward Lucky's observation area. When that little boy asked if elephants could play soccer, Alexandra smiled at the memory. And Lucky picked up the ball and scored. A goal right on cue. That video went viral. The board couldn't believe the positive publicity. The sanctuary's social media presence had exploded after that moment, leading to increased support and funding. But more importantly, it had shown potential donors the unique spirit of the place, the perfect blend of heart and innovation that Emily had envisioned. Speaking of publicity, Alexandra said, checking her tablet, the National Geographic team arrives next week to document Lucky's story. They're especially interested in how we're combining traditional farming wisdom with modern conservation techniques. Tom nodded toward the new arrivals enclosure, where workers were putting final touches on the rehabilitation space. Just in time to document our new residents? The rescued circus elephants? Yes. Alexandra's eyes sparkled with excitement. Their transport team reports they're already showing signs of improvement. Just knowing they're heading to a permanent home. I think Lucky's success story gave a lot of people hope. They watched as Sarah demonstrated Lucky's greeting behavior for the students, showing how the elephant had learned to gentle her strength when meeting new friends. The children's delighted gasps carried across the morning air as Lucky carefully offered each of them a trunk shake. Emily would have loved this, Tom said softly, remembering his late wife's dreams for the farm. Especially Sarah teaching. She's got her mother's gift for sharing knowledge. Alexandra leaned into him slightly. Sarah told me yesterday she wants to study veterinary medicine and conservation biology. She's already talking about adding a wildlife rehabilitation program to the sanctuary's services, following in her mother's footsteps, but blazing her own trail too. Tom felt pride swell in his chest. Just like this place, honoring its roots while growing into something new. The sound of more vehicles approaching drew their attention. Joe Carter's truck led a convoy of local volunteers, arriving for their regular workday. The community's involvement had become one of the sanctuary's greatest strengths, proving that the Walker farm could still provide meaningful work and purpose for their neighbors. Ready to start the day? Alexandra asked, her tablet all ready, showing their packed schedule, construction reviews, donor meetings, animal care rounds, and somehow they hoped a quiet dinner together in the evening. Tom looked out over their shared dream taking shape. The restored barns, the healing animals, the teaching gardens, the blend of old and new that somehow created something greater than either could have been alone. Every corner of the property held memories now of Emily's vision, of Lucky's rescue, of love found and dreams renewed. Ready, he answered, knowing he meant more than just the day ahead. Ready for their future. For the legacy they were building together, for the endless possibilities that grew from having the courage to let hope take root. Lucky's joyful trumpet echoed across the sanctuary grounds, welcoming the new day and all the wonders it might bring. The sunset painted the sanctuary in shades of gold and rose as guests gathered for the evening's celebration. A new family portrait hung in the renovated barn's great room. Tom, Alexandra, and Sarah standing beside Lucky, whose trunk was curved. In what looked remarkably like a smile, the photograph captured perfectly what Emily had envisioned, not just a sanctuary for animals, but a place where broken pieces could come together to form something whole and beautiful. "Stop fussing with your tie," Sarah told her father, reaching up to straighten it anyway. At 13, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that reminded Tom more of Emily every day. Her junior naturalist uniform had been replaced with a flowing blue dress for the evening, though her ever-present notebook still peeked from her pocket. "Your mother would be so proud of you," Tom said softly, watching as she organized the younger children who'd been chosen to help with the evening's presentation. Each child clutched a native plant seedling, part of the sanctuary's new educational program that Sarah had helped design. Alexandra appeared beside them, her usual tablet nowhere in sight. Tonight was about family, not business. The Thai sanctuary director just arrived, she reported. She says our rehabilitation success rate is becoming a model for facilities worldwide. Before Tom could respond, Lucky announced the arrival of more guests with a gentle trumpet. The elephant had developed an uncanny ability to recognize vehicles, always knowing when Dr. Gonzalez or Joe Carter were approaching. Now she swayed happily as familiar cars wound up the drive, her excitement adding to the festive atmosphere. "Everything's ready in the garden," Sarah reported, returning from her rounds. "Mom's oak tree is all lit up, and Lucky's practiced her part perfectly." The garden had been transformed for the evening. Twinkling lights wrapped the branches of Emily's oak, now surrounded by flourishing beds that combined her original plantings with new growth. The setting sun filtered through its leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground where, just hours ago, Alexandra had knelt on one knee and asked Tom a question that changed everything. "Are you sure about the timing?" Tom asked Alexandra softly, touching the simple gold band that now graced her finger. "We could have waited. The sanctuary's first anniversary is the perfect time," she answered, her eyes bright with certainty. "Emily brought us together through this place. It feels right to celebrate everything at once." As if in agreement, Lucky padded over to them, her trunk gentle as she touched each of their shoulders in turn. The gesture, once born of uncertainty, in a flood-swollen creek, had become her way of showing affection to her chosen family. "It's time," Sarah announced, her voice carrying the authority she'd developed as the sanctuary's youngest board member. The guests began moving toward the garden, guided by the soft glow of lanterns along the paths. The ceremony itself was simple but meaningful. Under the spreading branches of Emily's oak, surrounded by the sanctuary they'd built together, Tom and Alexandra exchanged vows that spoke of second chances and dreams renewed. Sarah stood beside them, her eyes bright with happy tears, as she presented the rings on a small pillow she'd embroidered with lucky elephants. Lucky played her part perfectly, offering flowers to the bride with her trunk, just as they'd practiced. The gathered community, sanctuary staff, local volunteers, and board members who'd become friends, applauded as Alexandra accepted the bouquet with graceful joy. "Walker Chen," Sarah mused later, as they shared cake in the garden. "Like the sanctuary sign, we're officially a matched set now." "We were already family," Alexandra reminded her, brushing a crumb from Sarah's dress with maternal affection. "This just makes it official." Tom watched his daughter and new wife, feeling the rightness of the moment settle into his bones. The sanctuary continued its work around them. Night staff checking on residents, security systems humming quietly, healing happening in a dozen different ways. As evening deepened into night, Lucky's content rumbles joined the chorus of natural sounds that filled their home. Children planted their seedlings along the garden's edge, ensuring Emily's legacy of growth would continue. Dr. Gonzalez shared stories of recent successes with sanctuary donors, while Joe Carter explained traditional farming techniques to fascinated conservationists. Under the stars, two worlds had become one: modern conservation and timeless wisdom, professional dedication and personal love, past dreams and future hopes. Emily's journal lay open on a display table, her words illuminated by soft light. A sanctuary is more than a place of safety. It's where broken things are made whole, where new families form, where hope takes root and grows. Looking at his expanded family, Sarah's quiet strength, Alexandra's brilliant spirit, Lucky's gentle presence, Tom knew Emily had been right all along. Some dreams just needed time, trust, and a little help from an elephant to come true. 1 year after the wedding, Tom opened a new ledger in the sanctuary's office. Unlike the worn book that had once recorded the farm's struggles, this volume told a different story. Each page tracked success, rehabilitation statistics, visitor numbers, research breakthroughs, and most importantly, lives changed, both human and animal. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked a transformed landscape. Where struggling crops once fought against drought, native grasslands now flourished. The old barn had become the heart of a thriving rehabilitation center, its traditional architecture housing cutting-edge medical equipment. Emily's garden had expanded into a teaching space, where Sarah, now 14, led workshops on sustainable agriculture and wildlife care. "Morning, love," Alexandra called from the doorway, 2 coffee mugs in hand. She'd just returned from a conference where the Walker Chen Sanctuary's innovative approach had been highlighted as a model for conservation projects worldwide. Lucky's doing her morning rounds with the new arrivals. Through the window, they could see their first rescue, introducing herself to 3 recently rehabilitated elephants. Lucky's gentle presence had proven invaluable in helping traumatized animals adjust to their new home. Her own story of rescue and renewal gave hope to everyone who visited the sanctuary. "Sarah's college applications went out this morning," Tom mentioned, accepting the coffee. "Early decision for the veterinary program." Alexandra smiled, settling into what had become her favorite spot on the office's window seat. "She's already better with the animals than half our staff. Did you see her work with that injured hawk yesterday?" "Emily's touch," Tom said softly. "She had the same gift for healing." The sanctuary had indeed become a place of healing, just as Emily had dreamed. But it had grown into something even greater, a bridge between tradition and innovation, a proving ground for new conservation techniques, a gathering place for people who believed in second chances. Dr. Gonzalez's voice carried from the medical wing, where she was teaching a group of veterinary students. The sanctuary's teaching program had become as renowned as its rehabilitation work. Joe Carter could be heard in the distance, explaining to visitors how traditional farming wisdom complemented modern conservation practices. The boards approved. "The expansion," Alexandra said, pulling out her ever-present tablet to show Tom the plans. "We can break ground on the new wildlife rehabilitation center next spring." Tom nodded, thinking of how far they'd come from those uncertain days when the project had nearly fallen apart. Emily would have loved seeing all this, especially Sarah finding her path. "She did see it," Alexandra replied gently. "She saw it all before any of us did. She just needed us to be ready to see it too." A commotion of happy trumpeting drew their attention outside. Lucky was leading her new friends to the creek, showing them the joy of playing in clean, cool water. Sarah walked alongside, her notebook in hand, recording observations with the careful dedication that had already earned her authorship credits on several research papers. The scene brought Tom back to that stormy morning when he'd first heard Lucky's desperate cries. One choice made from simple compassion had changed everything, had given Sarah her future, had brought Alexandra into their lives, had transformed a struggling farm into a sanctuary where hope grew as naturally as Emily's beloved gardens. "Ready for the afternoon tour?" Alexandra asked, rising and offering her hand. Tom took it, feeling the simple gold band that matched his own. Always ready. Together they walked out into the sanctuary that love had built. Around them, their extended family went about their work. The dedicated staff, the local volunteers, the healing animals, and at the heart of it all, Lucky and Sarah, showing newcomers how to trust again. Emily's oak tree stood tall and strong, against the morning sky, its branches stretching toward the future she had imagined. Below it, her journal remained in its place of honor in the welcome center, open to words that had become the sanctuary's unofficial motto. In the end, every sanctuary is about love. Love of the land, love of the creatures who share it, love of the possibilities that arise when we dare to dream bigger than ourselves. The Walker Chen Wildlife Sanctuary had become living proof of that love, growing more each day, healing more, each season reaching toward tomorrow with hope as deep as its roots and as wide as its dreams.